Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. We respectfully acknowledge that we live and work in Mi'kma'ki as a steward of the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are all treaty people. Okay, can I get someone to approve the agenda?
Second.
Moved by Councillor Bremner, second by Warden Weber. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. All right. The minutes have been circulated. Would somebody like to approve? Moved by Warden Weber. Second by Councillor Coolin. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. All right, we have 3 topics on the agenda. Garth, you're up. First one, coastal engagement. Is there 4 topics? It looks like 3.
Well, you got an old agenda.
Oh, my bad.
All right, good morning, Council. So I'm here today to report back on the 3 public engagement meetings that we held
Oh, there we go.
in late 2025, and that was following an initial discussion with Council to go out and start to talk to the public about coastal regulations before we actually draft anything that we want to bring forward for consideration. So as we've done over the number of years, we've done this what we heard report. So this is primarily focused on the feedback, and the slides that I have here today correspond with the report to go through a number of topics. At the end, we will be looking for some general direction from council in terms of sort of where we head next, and there's a number of options for how we do that. So I'll begin, but happy to take questions as we go. So just a brief overview. So again, 3 meetings in November and December of 2025. Western Shore, Chester Village, and Hubbard's were the locations for those. And they were all held in the same format, an open house drop-in format. So we were there for 2 hours, and people could come at any point and stay for as long as they liked. We had sort of poster boards in little groups or sections set up around the room, and people generally would kind of direct people to go clockwise around the room, and we had them set up in a way to try to introduce sort of the threats or the sea level rise and the risks that we're looking to address. And then moving through some of the regulatory options and some of the other considerations, which again translate into the slides here today. So we also had comment cards available at those sessions for anyone who wanted to fill them out there or take them home and send them back in. And the complete list of comment cards that have been completed and received, as well as emails that were related to those sessions, are attached to the report as well. In terms of advertising, we went a little bit above and beyond what we would typically do. So we did a series of advertising on CKBW radio ads, and that was in the run-up to each of the 3 sessions. So we kind of did a blast a few days in advance of each. We did our typical advertising in the South Shore Bulletin. Staff also went around the municipality and put up posters in businesses, community mailboxes, anywhere that we could, that seemed like a place where people might stop and see, or notice boards if they were there. Those are ideal. And then we also did our municipal social media and email notifications. And as we do for most major projects, created a page on engagechester.ca. So just in terms of the numbers from the session, so 3 sessions ranged from a low of 8 in Western Shore, which was the first session, to a high of 27 in Hubbard. So that leaves, I think, 25 in Chester Village. So total of 60 people between the 3 sessions. We did notice, as mentioned there, a gradual increase in turnout, and that was part of the reason that we spread out the sessions over a fairly long time. We were hoping that word of mouth, in addition to all the other advertising that we had, would get out there. So always hard to judge on numbers, but generally we were pretty pleased with the engagement, and the people that did come out were very engaged. They wanted to be there. They either maybe had property that they had questions about, or had seen things in the community that they were concerned about. So we had a lot of really good, thorough discussions with the folks that did come out. This is how the sort of the rest of the slides will be set up. So you'll see sort of a summary of the feedback for a variety of topics, and they'll get a little more specific as we go. And then a staff comment, which could potentially form some of the direction that council gives at the end, if that's the option that council chooses. So first off, this is sort of just a general comment. And this was very welcome from the staff that were going out to do this work. The vast majority were supportive of the municipality proceeding with the implementation, and I will say there, of some form of coastal regulations for new development. Overall, there was a strong consensus that something is needed, and that the current situation is not how we should continue. And as we go through it, you'll see there is a bit more nuance as we get into what some of those specific regulations might be. Similarly, and again, very pleased as staff going out to do this, we certainly considered that a big part of this work could be education, to get the word out there and explain how these processes and mechanisms could be. And happily, most people were already very much aware of that, either through personal experience or again, just living in a coastal community or municipality or coastal province. So there was, the one aspect that was, I would say, a little less discussed initially, but once we mentioned it, did get really strong support, was coastal wetlands and protecting coastal wetlands. Erosion, sea level rise, those kind of things, the public was very, very well informed on, which was great, and made that part of the job that much easier. So now we're actually getting into sort of some of the specific topics and potential regulatory mechanisms. So the first one is a vertical setback, or you could also call it a minimum building elevation. What this is in practice is a measurement, and all new development would need to be at or above, and it's measured from sea level. And so it's usually expressed in meters in our documents, or would be, and that would be the minimum elevation that has been determined based on climate modeling for the next 100 years, and that would have been determined to be, if you build here, this will not flood through either just regular processes, or when you have that combined storm and wind and everything pushing up on the coast, that property would be safe. So that concept got a strong amount of support. I would say the majority of attendees were supportive of this one. I think, if I had to infer, it's fairly logical. People can pretty easily understand that you need to get up and away from the water in order to have your structure protected. And I also think people appreciated that it's a fairly simple one to grasp, to work with, and it applies, and we spoke to this in the sessions, it's easy to apply equitably across the entire coastline. Our sea level rise from one end of the municipality to the other is going to be very close to the same, within fractions of millimeters. So people appreciated that this would be, could be applied as a blanket regulation that would be equitable and fair across the municipality. So strong support for a vertical setback. Go to the next slide.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Before you move on, I
Sure.
just wanted to ask, when you say vertical setback, are you thinking like the finished floor elevation of the structure versus the topography of the land? Some jurisdictions don't allow you to alter the land to bring the land up to a certain height. So like what's your feelings about the public input relating to land improvement to satisfy these requirements?
Yeah, so that's a fair point, and depending on how those are written, that can have a lot of impact on where building can occur. If you allow infill to create that elevation, then that provides a lot more opportunity for people that might have lower lying land. So there is a slide on infill later, but most of the comments we heard around infill were infill beyond the high water mark, creating new land. I don't recall a lot of specific comment about that question, but I think that's typically in our land use bylaws, we do control infill beyond the way it's written now is usually beyond a foot of infill or a half a meter of infill.
I think that's in the village, but like,
Yeah,
outside of the.
right.
I don't
So-
sure if it is outside.
So that would be an option for council to consider. Do we want to, is there a desire to bring in any regulations for infill?
I guess what I'm wondering is if
Yeah.
you have a low flat site,
Right,
it could be really expansive, but low.
right.
Can you build your building
Yeah.
high?
I would
And
say,
fill around it if you
yeah.
wanted to satisfy this requirement, or are you then just like, nope, that's it, it's too low, the topography of the land just
Right.
is low, therefore no building can occur?
no, I think the first option would be, at least the way I would suggest we start that discussion, which is that we would allow infill to get you to that minimum elevation. What we're concerned about, to the initial comment, was that the habitable floor area, so where people are gonna be living, would be above that elevation. So unless, council had strong feelings on not allowing that through infill, I think, and again, you'll see throughout these slides, there's, as with many regulations, there's a balance to be had here in terms of achieving the intent of what we're trying to do, but also a balance in terms of acceptance from the community, and existing landowners and all those kinds of things. So I think that's actually a good example of potentially, if we were to say no infill, if you have low-lying land, that's it, that's gonna be likely to receive more pushback, at least from particular landowners, than if we were to say, what we're concerned about here is life safety and the building being out of the water for the lifetime of the expected lifetime of the building. Therefore, you need to build at this height. How you get there is there's more options, for example. So that would be my initial take, I think.
Well, I noticed in that, because I read through the comments, sorry to monopolize here, but I noticed when I read through the comments that there were definitely two camps, and some, I don't know any of the individuals, most of them are anonymous anyway, but it would appear that some like the idea of using this proposed regulation to just prohibit development
Right.
on the coast, and that would be their aim, is to make it restrictive, so therefore it just negates that development. And then I saw some others that sort of were more accepting of the intent of the regulation, which was for public safety and protections.
Right.
And then they were more interested in talking about the terms of, so someone just wanted it as restrictive as possible, so that you could just, it would just be like to turn that discussion into a no development
Right.
zone kind of discussion.
Yeah.
And that hasn't been our history here in Chester. We've been pretty, maybe down further than down the coastline, they're pretty open, but like in around HRM and stuff, they're somewhat restrictive.
Yeah, absolutely, and I generally agree with those comments in terms of the way we have done planning and where we're going, again, like back when the general basic zone was introduced, when we're going from nothing to something, that's a significant jump, and there's nothing to say that we couldn't revisit these rules, at plan review or at any other frequency, and actually there's a couple other pieces that I'll mention here that we may wish to revisit them because there may be more tools available in the future that aren't available now. I think those are all good considerations to make, that, again, we saw a strong desire to do something. That doesn't mean we have to do everything all at once,
Yeah.
and that's
I think it's
the balance.
worthwhile just reaffirming this committee's and what the council's desire is, what the desired outcome of this. I mean, if we're gonna be considering some sort of regulation, we can never lose sight of the actual purpose of that. Like, if the purpose is for protection, for example, then we shouldn't use the regulation to enforce prohibition. So like if we just want to prohibit development, then
we can do that.
that's fine too, and we
right.
just have to be upfront about it
Right.
and design the regulation accordingly. So very interesting discussion, and I think sometimes when you start down the path of detail, you sort of can lose sight of that. Councillor Coolin?
Yeah, am I right in assuming that we potentially could allow infilling to create a vertical zone? But
Right.
isn't that the whole premise of not having infill on the coastal water for the purpose of why this is going enacted in the first place? I mean, I know that you're saying individual homes are to be safe, but isn't the whole premise to protect infilling going into the ocean? Like, am I
so-
wrong in assuming that?
Respectfully, I would say, no, that's not the
Good,
purpose.
then explain it to me, please.
We heard at the sessions that people are very concerned with infill past the high water mark.
Absolutely.
Right, and there is a slide on that which explains that we only have so much jurisdiction in that area. We can't stop that. We can't stop infill beyond the high water mark. Our authority ends at the high water mark, and it's a provincial matter from that point on.
Yes.
So I would say the intent of the regulations is not to prevent infill beyond the high water mark. It's to protect people and property
Okay,
from.
so that wasn't a reiterate, that you didn't mention that at the very beginning, so I just assumed we were talking about infilling, right?
Yeah.
To create a vertical setback.
Right, so to the discussion that we've been having here, again, mostly at the sessions, we heard about infill beyond the high water mark. What we're talking about now is, do we want to allow, if you have a low-lying piece of
Fair
land and
enough.
you need to be 3 meters above and you're only a meter above, should we allow you to bring in fill to build that extra 2 meters up so that you can
Great,
meet the
great.
vertical?
Perfect.
Right.
I understand,
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you.
Sure.
Counselor Church.
I just want to comment, that's well and good. But if there's a wetland, they'll still have to go through Department of Environment
Yep.
regulations because that will have an impact, you know, on streams, et cetera. If they infill a low-lying property, quite typically that comes with a wetland.
Yeah, so we, so we have building setbacks around
Yeah.
wetlands and streams, and the province has regulations if you actually are working within the wetland itself to infill or build a bridge or anything else. So that's where that, again, that jurisdictional
Yeah.
line falls, and, yeah.
Because it could impact the neighbors as well.
Right, yeah, yeah. And again, and those are the kinds of things that, that councils do consider when they do bring in infill regulations.
Yeah.
Because again, that is something that is possible when a development's taking place. We can regulate
Yeah.
infill, and one of the reasons potentially is stormwater onto
Yeah.
adjacent properties, yeah, yeah. Great, okay, no, good, all good discussion. So the next topic or regulation, I guess, that we went out to talk about was the idea of a horizontal setback. So, this being from the high water mark inland, should there be a predetermined distance for how far back, new structures or new dwellings can be set. I would say the feedback here was, as I said, was mixed, and we heard some opposition, as well as some tacit support for it. But overall, there was a good understanding when we had these discussions that this is a much more complex and potentially difficult regulation to implement in a way that's both effective and fair. And that is because the coastline, unlike the sea level, the coastline is extremely varied from one end of the municipality to the other. So rates of erosion and those types of things are going to be completely different from one area to another. And a blanket, for example, 20-meter setback would penalize some folks who would be safe to come closer, and it would not protect folks that might need to be 60 meters back in a case where there's extreme erosion, and over 100 years, they're gonna lose by a significant amount of coastline. So the public understood this, and again, we had mixed feedback here. There was some support for just a baseline horizontal setback, with the ability to pay for a site-specific study that would allow someone to build closer if the study proved that that was safe for that site. We also heard just that the complexities of this were too difficult and we should just avoid this mechanism entirely. And then there was also a number of folks who supported a horizontal setback, but without the option for the site-specific study. And the reasonings given there were, it shouldn't be based on someone's ability to pay and or the fact that just the rules should be the same for everyone, no exceptions. So this is a tricky one. My recommendation at this point would be to proceed without proceeding or not proceed with looking further into a horizontal setback. And I'll say, this is one of those ones where I'll say, at this time, the primary reason for that, some of these issues, equity and ability to pay, will come back if we were to revisit this issue, but the main issue is just the complexity of establishing a fair setback. When the province was working on the Coastal Protection Act, they did have a tool called the CERFA, C-E-R-F-A, developed, and that was a site-specific assessment. It was tied to the Coastal Protection Act legislation, so there's some stuff in there that wouldn't work, to my understanding, as just if they were to just release it. However, I know there are discussions, I believe at the province, and I've made some phone calls last year and tried to push. I know our counterparts at the District of Lunenburg, I believe their council has just passed a motion requesting that the province prioritize releasing this tool because it is something that municipalities want access to. And there was some indication that it could have been included as part of a package that NSFM announced late last fall, and it wasn't included, and I don't know why. So my recommendation at this point is until that tool or a similar tool is made available to us, that this is likely one that we should avoid. Even when it's available, there's still gonna be issues. Like I said, should we, do we wanna set up a system where those with more funds have the ability to, work within the rules more than those that don't? But at this point, before we even get to those questions, it's just, how would we implement, we'd be slapping down a baseline setback, and it really just, I don't think would work. So, an interesting one there, possibly more to come. And if council's interested, I could reach out to Modal and get a little more information about that motion, if council was interested in having that discussion at another point about asking the province for that tool.
Councilor Reese.
Thank you. I just can't get past the fact that the province won't release it. I think that it's handcuffing every municipality. It really is. It's handcuffing everybody. They've got the information. I mean, it'll just save so much staff time for every municipality. And like, I don't know what we can do, but bully them, to shame them to release it. Do you know what steps have been taken to ask them to release it, or is it just something?
Yeah, it's some of the conversations that I've had have been, asked, have been kept off the record, essentially,
But that's
the
okay.
specifics of it. So I haven't heard a lot of official, but I know municipalities have asked. I know I've reached out to the provincial departments to ask, and it did sound like there was some consideration being given, and again, my understanding is that there would need to be at least some modifications made to it because it was tied to the provisions of the Coastal Protection Act, which isn't going to be going forward. But my understanding is that likely with some modifications, it could be made to just be a standalone tool that could then theoretically be provided, to municipalities who could then say, okay, if you're a surveyor and engineer, you go through this assessment, and then that will determine the setback for that particular property. So I don't have a great answer.
I just think it's poor management for the province to dump it and then and have the tool. I mean, Andre, you worked on it. So it's got value.
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah.
It's nice.
It has value.
I like it.
I mean, I wish that every municipality, and I don't know what about NSFM is just, and show some backbone and say, we're not doing it unless you release the report. And then leave it in the park. What are they gonna do? I mean, it's handcuffing them. We're gonna sit around here for years trying to develop this policy. Not just us, every other municipality. And I mean, and I know it's not your fault, obviously it's not, but I just think we need to make a stand here. It's crazy. So that's all I have. Sorry.
We can pressure.
Councilor Connors.
Thank you, Deputy Warden Vino. So just remind me again in terms of NSFM and the fact that they are representative, and that I assume when I go into their mission and their mandate that they represent the municipalities, the municipal councilors individually and so on. But as well, remind me again, but is it not is it not a fact, and I may be incorrect, but is it not a fact that the province is actually paying for that staff person and this entire, and probably the entirety of the project of coastal involvement within NSFM? So let's think about that. The province is paying for that position, paying for that budget outside of that position, if you will. So whatever that individual or individuals are doing within NSFM, that's being paid for directly and 100% by the province. So we're asking NSFM to release what the province doesn't want to release. But yet, for me, I can't get past that, NSFM and who they actually represent. But that's okay, I just wanted to put that back out on the table in case we might have forgotten.
I'll weigh in with comments. So the province has a map with suggested horizontal offsets. We could call it up here for the benefit of those councillors that have never looked at it. But there is such a thing at this moment. So whether you're in Hubbards or you're in Western Shore or anywhere in between, we do have such a map. Now, the granularity of that map is in question. But I'm just asking and inquiring, like, could we not review that map and come up with some sort of either refer to the map, or in the absence of a tool, could we not refer to the map or potentially average out or come up with some sort of suggestion for a setback based on the mapping that we have, which is, let's say it's 70% good or 80%, or whatever it is. Could we not do that? And because to me, the vertical setback is obviously a no-brainer. Sea level is sea level for a reason. It's the same all over. Anywhere where the sea touches the land, that's sea level. And we know that in storm events, it can go higher, and that amount we can determine. That, you're right, that is easy. But the risk to the public is very similar in terms of horizontal versus, so you can have an escarpment that is 3 meters above sea level and it's full of clay, and you could build your house because you made the vertical setback, you build it right against that.
Right.
And then after one storm, your house is in the water and you're in the house with it. That's a problem. And it seems like a big hole. If our role here is to provide protections and to limit risk, we're missing a big part of it. And, you know, I think having a suggestion, even if it's a bit constraining, and then allowing, because I think we've talked a little bit here at this committee, or maybe the council, about having, then calling an expert, if that is too constraining, then to provide some sort of report allowing maybe up to a certain percentage restriction, reduction. I sort of reject the idea that it's like pay a fee and then you can bypass some part of the rule, because every difficult piece of land often requires extra design work or whatever to manage, and this would be no different. So if you have an easy piece of ocean frontage, you would not need this potentially. And if you did have a difficult one, it's very common to have to hire people to help you satisfy the regulations. Doesn't matter if it's sewage management or dealing with wetlands or whatever, or transportation issues, getting a driveway in and out. This is all very common in any land development. So the idea that it's like a favoritism to the wealthy, I kind of reject that idea, because it really doesn't make sense. It's not just you're like paying a fee or like a fine, and then you can just, because some of the comments almost sounded like they saw it as that, just the way it was worded. Yeah, you just pay your $300 and then you can do what you want. Like, I don't think that that's what we're talking about. Obviously, if we said there was a requirement to be, say, 30 meters back from the ocean, let's say that we reviewed the mapping and in general that covered most of our shoreline. But maybe in Aspetogan, where it's like it's all granite. You know, 1,000 years, it's not gonna erode probably 1 inch. You know, maybe if they had a report from a qualified person to say, you know, this really isn't a risk in this case, here's the site plan, what we're planning to do, this is the type of geology, fetch all this information and provide a report, you can then vary that separation down to 15 meters or something in that case. I think that's a reasonable, in my view, that's a reasonable thing to do, but I'd love to hear the opinions of the others and your own.
Sure.
I agree.
Okay, hang on, okay, you're there. Okay.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, to your point, there is the coastal hazard map that the province has, which we could use and review as a starting point. There is also a slide later here where NSFM has released a program with essentially funding. It's basically pre-approved consultants and a pre-approved spending limit. So we have applied to that, and that's the kind of technical expertise that we could rely on that consultant to help inform. So I definitely agree. I think if there's a will or desire to keep pushing for a solution on this one, absolutely, yeah. And to your point, I take your point about the types of situations you said where if, again,
It's kind of a half
coming back to
measure.
what's the objective of these regulations, yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah, it would just seem like it's a half measure at this point, if we just look at the vertical, because it,
Right.
yeah, anyways, we live in a 3D world.
So the next topic is actually potentially plays into this horizontal setback discussion, and that's around the idea of minimum lot size. So just as a quick reminder, outside of the village, our minimum lot size is determined by the minimum that Nova Scotia Environment will approve for an on-site septic system in areas that we don't have sewer, obviously. So what we heard was concern, and again, this could fall into either the horizontal setback or the minimum lot size, particularly at the Hubbard session about land between the 329 and the coast, narrow or steep, or what some people would refer to as no land being developed and receiving permits and approvals to do so. There and again, where we rely on the Nova Scotia Environment approval, if a small system or a holding tank is approved as being adequate for that dwelling, then that's sufficient from our development and building permit criteria as things stand now. So one concept that was discussed and actually seemed to get well, I'd certainly say more support than the horizontal setback, was the idea of implementing a minimum lot size in at least our coastal areas. I should say one thing that's not on the slides here that is almost inherent with this if we do proceed with regulations is the creation of what we'd probably call the coastal overlay. So it'll work very much like our lakefront overlay. It's essentially, it sits on top of the zoning and it says if you're within this area, you have to deal with your zone plus these additional coastal regulations in this case. So just to make that clear. So if, for example, we wanted to look at implementing a minimum lot size, it doesn't necessarily have to be the entire municipality, out to Forties and Seffernsville. It could just be within our minimum, or within our coastal overlay as well. So again, this seemed, this potentially helps at what we were just talking about not having a horizontal setback, but it also could be done in addition to. You can definitely layer these together. So the sort of general staff recommendation or comment here is that if this seemed like a good idea to council, we could do some research and try to come up with a more appropriate minimum lot size to avoid those very small or narrow lots being developed. Within our coastal overlay. Discussion there? Or we
So
can-
what does the committee think? I'd like to hear. Councillor Asif.
Thank you. I don't like the idea of lot size, small. How do you define small?
Right.
And not only that, if you have a small lot and you have an engineer come in and design a system for that lot, I don't,
Getting into a
to me,
quotation versus-
I'd have to hear a lot more about how small, because it's obviously land that's been here for generations that it's on the coast, or, and it's maybe been in a family forever, and someone decides they wanna build and they can't build. These seaside lots, I don't expect that they're huge anyway, but anyway, that's my feeling.
Counselor Coolin?
I disagree. I don't think you should be able to build on a postage stamp. I think if the lot is too small, I mean, whether or not driveway is a driveway approved or a septic is, I just think that it's just asking for inherent trouble down the road. I think building on a postage stamp is not correct.
Just to Councillor Asif's sort of question, how small is small, and to be fair, we would definitely, if we go down this, we'd come back and before anything would go in. But just as a sort of, I guess, a starting point for thinking about it, historically, we had found that, the minimum size that Nova Scotia Environment would require was typically around 3/4 of an acre, and in some cases, half an acre, and that would depend on the soil types. What we've been, I think, seeing, particularly along the 329, more so than maybe other parts, is much smaller lots being developed. I don't actually have a number for you, and my understanding, although again, not being fully privy to all the internal applications, is that in some cases, they've been approving holding tanks which is not the same as a full septic tank with a septic field. And I think those were the kinds of lots that were being more, so, yeah, anyway, just a bit more context there.
Counselor Asif?
Yeah, thank you. So I guess, getting back to the raise, so I guess if I'm a landowner, what I'd like to see in this regulation, and you have a minimum lot size, okay? So I have the opportunity to ask for a variance based on an engineer's report that says this piece of land will sustain a septic system. That I could, if you just limit it to X amount of feet, and there's no recourse for the landowner to dispute it because he has the, we can build that into the regulation, I think. I would be fine with that, yeah.
I'll take a turn here. So I think what we're talking about, again, is a discussion, and I think we need to be open our minds to this, is whether it's a prohibition versus protection. So if your land is such that, let's say that it's small, but maybe it's really skinny and deep, so it could travels away from the ocean, and you can be upland from, you may have still a small lot. And if this WISE committee were to make recommendation to council to say, we want to put a minimum lot size, that lot, even though it was safe, would be prohibited. So if what we really want to do is protect the public, then lot size really doesn't enter into it, because it would have to do with setbacks, elevations, and protections for the structures and the people that inhabit them. If what we want is to prohibit development in areas where people perceive them as being unsuitable, that's a zoning issue that has nothing to do with protection. So I think this WISE committee should consider how we want to frame this recommendation to council, because they're very different things, in my view.
If I might, to that point, I think the minimum lot size was potentially seen as, and to the points that you've just made, not a perfect, but as a potential alternative to the horizontal setback. If there's a desire to go down the route of further investigating the horizontal setback, then to your point, what is the minimum lot size achieving? Well, Nova Scotia Environment has already determined that a septic system of some sort is suitable for there, and that is their jurisdiction. We don't, if a septic system fails, we don't go out and investigate it. We send that to Nova Scotia Environment. So I generally agree that if we're thinking we're going to go down the route of a horizontal setback, then this particular piece may not be as, again, thinking back to achieving the objectives of what we're trying to do here. It's almost maybe a a duplication, or to your point, it's more of a zoning and a density issue and a community character issue, which is not around life safety and protection of structures.
Warden Weber.
Yeah, no, I just agree. I mean, this bylaw is very specific. It's not land use policy bylaw. It's about protection of property. And it's not about community character. That's a whole other realm, you know, and so I don't think they should be tied together.
And again, we'll, sort of final decisions, we'll go to the end, so we don't need, but this is, I'm glad we're discussing these as we go, because it is, you're getting to the nature of it. These are all interrelated, and how you package and layer the regulations makes a big difference, and you can make cases that some aren't needed and maybe other.
I feel if we landed in a place where we couldn't apply some sort of horizontal setback for whatever reason, then the land size may be not a very imperfect way of maybe achieving similar goals.
Yes.
But if we're able to get the horizontal setback and the vertical setback, to me, those sorts of no land scenarios that have plagued the Hubbards area that will all go away.
Right.
Because the horizontal setback will deal with that.
Exactly, yeah. And I guess to be fair to the attendees and the comments that we heard, this discussion was following up on how complicated a horizontal setback was to implement, so that could have been why many people favored this option as to your point, an imperfect solution to that issue, yeah.
Different issues.
Yeah, okay, great. So yes, as I mentioned, infill did get raised, although again, primarily it was dealing with the creation of new land beyond the high water mark, as opposed to, sort of building a hill to put your house on, or that side of things. So as I mentioned, our municipal authority does end at the high water mark, and beyond the high water mark, it is Department of Natural Resources, and in some cases, Transport Canada, who needs to sign off on infill applications. So in this area, we explained the mechanism that we added to the Village of Chester land use bylaw in the most recent review, which essentially is our crack at working within our jurisdiction, but disincentivizing infill beyond the ordinary high water mark. And essentially, the way we've written that is that the date of the bylaw includes an outline of the coast, and any land that's created beyond that is automatically dubbed what we call the village land use bylaw, at least an ocean infill zone. And that zone has severely limited land uses permitted on it, virtually none. You could build a wharf, you could put lawn chairs out there because that doesn't require a permit, but no structures. And it also, we have language in there to say that it does not count towards your setback. And if it was, say, a vertical or a horizontal setback, we could include that as well. So it doesn't, if you create 20 feet of land, that doesn't allow you to get 20 feet closer or further out, beyond what would have been the high water mark. So, again, not having the jurisdiction to prevent infill beyond the high water mark, the intent here is we could investigate how that would work to extend that provision to the municipal bylaw as well to cover the coastal area.
Okay, Councillor Asif.
Yes, Deputy Warden Vino, you would have is it a big process to infill, like the regulation from the province, from Department of Environment, if you want to infill the ocean? Because I see a lot of it, and that's why I ask, right? You would know.
I would say that they're not really thrilled about the idea, but, I mean, under the law, there's lots of things that can happen. The question I think that we should be asking ourselves again is, are we trying to prohibit development? Are we trying to protect the public? And if you have the vertical and horizontal setbacks, who are we to say that this new land that's been created is not real land, if it's been legally created? I really struggle with that. Like, one is a way to sort of push down development, and not allow it because they don't like the character of it. But is that what we're trying to do? I mean, I don't know. I think that it's a very unpleasant process to fill in the water. Otherwise, people would do it.
They're doing it anyway.
But I mean,
But are they
there's
doing it
obviously
legally?
regulation and a process that you go through Department of Environment, but is it a strict, like, is it very strict, or,
I don't think it's that easy, not as maybe as easy as others think here, but
okay,
I haven't, professionally, I haven't found a lot of clients that are filling in the
Filling,
ocean
okay.
very
I just-
legally,
yeah.
you know. If they're illegally doing it, well, that's another matter, I
Yeah.
suppose, but,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, lots of things are easy to do when you do them illegally. But, but I don't know, I mean, I'll hear from others.
I don't know how many times you have to say it, but this bylaw is intended for protection, not for character. And so I just think that if we should stick to the protection part, which is what it's all about. And, you know, if we want to review the land use policy and bylaws for Hubbards to prevent people from getting too close to the coast with a structure, that's a community land use policy issue to me.
I have also a hard time imagining technically if we have a horizontal, like a vertical setback of say 3 meters or 2.8 meters or whatever we end up with, that you would actually infill to that height, like that would be like a
lot.
technical, it would
Yes.
be a massive undertaking. And then to have that fill placed in such a manner that you could actually put a structure on top of it would be like
Crazy.
phenomenally expensive, like, it just like, it just seems like the cost would be a prohibition enough that I don't feel like we really need to turn our minds to it too much, but that's just my view on it. You know, I welcome the feedback of others on the committee.
I think to not sound like a broken record here, but again, with the intent to investigate the horizontal setback, I think a strong case can be made that again would have potentially been another way to work around not having a horizontal setback. So again, don't disagree with
solve
that.
a lot of it by
And we do, to the comments here, we do have the 2030 plan review, which will be upon us before we know it. And that certainly would potentially be on some of these other items like minimum lot size and character, could be a way to separate the coastal regulations from some of the other related, but not necessarily exactly the same issues that have been come up. Yeah. Okay, so the next one, and this is an interesting one, I find interesting for discussion, is the idea, and we heard calls for this. So basically the question is this even necessary? Would a waiver do the same thing or replace the need for regulations? And I think I would say that's probably more thinking on the sort of the potential legal liability side of the municipality issues permits, if there was to be an issue, like a failure of due to sea level rise, would we be named in a potential lawsuit? So this is an interesting one, and from what I've seen in some bylaws, it is used. Generally, it's not used as the only mechanism; it's an addition to coastal regulations. Again, thankfully we've got Sam here, but based on previous discussions, essentially, my understanding, and I would certainly defer to Sam to put this in the proper language, is that there's no complete indemnification. No matter what piece of paper we have, we're likely to be named, and at the very minimum have to defend ourselves, which costs and which comes from the general, taxpayer. So, Sam, any other?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't like that idea at all.
Okay.
You're right, it starts with,
Oh, sorry, Sam, let me turn on your mic, here you go.
yeah, it starts with trying to draft a document that would be all-inclusive and address every possible issue that we could think of. But the other thing would be, that's just that person who's doing it. Property never stays in the name of that person. So you would have to have a way that knowledge, that waiver gets passed down to the next owner, the next owner, the next owner, so that 3 owners down the road, something happens, and that owner comes back and says, well, how could they build here, blah, blah, blah. And you say, oh, well, 3 owners ago, there was a waiver signed. And say, well, I don't know anything about that, and I didn't waive anything.
Right.
So, I don't think it's a good idea.
So my comment there was, if council would like to we could pursue how that might work in conjunction with coastal regulations, but my recommendation is to either avoid this entirely or definitely not rely on it as the only regulation we have.
Yeah.
I think you see the body language.
Yeah, sure. Yep, okay, no, that's great.
Shane says it won't work.
So now we're into the tricky ones. The last two, but they are, I think, have the potential to be the toughest to come to a good decision on, for all the reasons we've talked about so far. The purpose, existing property owner rights, all of those kind of things. So starting with existing structures and additions. So we had a poster board that kind of had some pros and cons and different ways of looking at this, because we did want to get some feedback on this. And we had examples that we saw from other bylaws, which range from, if you have an existing structure, you can build without regard for the coastal regulations, in terms of additions. To the other end of the spectrum, which is if you have an existing structure, any new additions have to meet all of the coastal regulations, even if the existing structure remains out of compliance. And then there's a middle ground of existing structures can expand to some square footage or percentage of the original building without having to meet the new regulations. So we heard, again, sort of a mix of opinions on this, but generally, we did hear strong opposition to the approach that would not allow any addition that didn't have to comply. That, for example, in the District of Lunenburg, that was the approach that they took, that any new additions have to meet all of the regulations. On the HRM side,
Same as Queens.
it's almost the other, on the HRM side, it's almost the other way, where if you have an existing structure, there's no limit to your expansion. So we're stuck in the middle here. And again, I think this is one where, finding a balance is important, but also remembering why we're here and why we're talking about this. So my sort of general recommendation, at least to pursue at this point, would be to maybe pick the middle ground, allow some limited expansion up to a maybe percentage of the existing structure, and we can talk about, should that be 50%, should it be 100%, what have you, and attempt to find a balance there.
Councilor Asif?
Thank you. I like the idea, but if you're gonna put an addition on, it has to be towards the back of the property, not the front of the property. I think things like that, would make sense to me, not allowing to build closer because they're in they're grandfathered in basically. So I would think we would like to write something like that in it, like the addition must be,
Parallel.
or whatever, yeah, not any closer.
So the conditions can't be worsened.
Right.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that would be similar to other existing structure provisions we have in terms of yard setbacks, for example. So if you have an existing structure that's too close to a property line because it was built before the zoning changed, that would be very much the same way that that's the language that we typically use. It cannot worsen, cannot worsen the situation. So yes, we could definitely put some language in there for that. Yeah. Okay.
Solicitor?
Yeah, I just have one thought where we brought up a number of times that the intent of what we're doing here is safety, property safety, which is different than, let's say, setbacks we have here.
Yes.
If you got a property that's way too close, it's existing, it's way too close, so it's dangerous, but we're allowing it because it's there. And now we're gonna issue a permit to allow more, that could be, could double
the
this.
rub, yeah.
We know it's dangerous.
Right. Yeah.
I'm thinking there should be some thought into the, what the existing situation is before we just give a permit, even though it's no closer.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And what's there, maybe an old rickety building, and the person wants to put a brand new $500,000, $1 million
Right.
structure up as an addition,
Yes. Yeah.
but it's dangerous.
That's real life. That will happen.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we should think about that
Yeah.
first before we.
Yeah. That's where it gets very tricky.
So should there be a building that doesn't comply with our new bylaw and it burns to the ground? Do they get to replace it?
And you're right, that's another potential piece that we can
I
add.
don't feel like we should disenfranchise people of their ability to live in their own home.
Yeah.
How do we deal with that?
Yeah, and that runs up against what we've just heard. So if you have an old home that's in an unsafe location, it burns, and then we're gonna give you a new permit for the next 100
Oh,
years.
I think we could point
Yeah.
to like on.
Oh, yeah. No,
Near the
yeah.
old stone bridge, there's one that's definitely not gonna meet the vertical setback.
Yep, and that's a fair point too. I
So
mean,
should it burn to the ground the week after we set this into motion, then what happens?
yeah,
Land is useless to them.
yeah, it's a tough one. Okay, so well, let's go deal with the next tough one, and then we'll have to come back and figure out where we're going with all this. So the last one, and again, I think even tougher, maybe, is existing lots. So this is the idea of existing lots that were legally created and exist today. They do not have a structure on them, so they're not in that last category where they'd be either doing an addition or a replacement potentially of an existing structure. But they do not comply with the regulations that we have in place, and how do we handle that? So we heard, again, a mix of opinions on this, obviously from those who have land that might be in this category, very strong opinions about not wanting to lose the value of their property and the ability to build on it. Like we heard, some of that is family that's been passed down and there's a future intent. But then again, on the other side of things, to the discussion that we've just had, if there are lots that don't meet our provisions and we're issuing not just permits for an addition or a renovation, but a brand new structure, does that fit within the overall intent of what we're trying to do and protect people and new structures from the impacts of sea level rise? So, I think like I said, on the last, and again, my recommendations are just what they are, for consideration, but on the last one, I was proposing the compromise, allow some amount of expansion. On this one, I couldn't find my way to recommend anything other than going with the more stringent option, which is that, existing lots would have to meet, the new regulations in order to have new structures built. And I should, a bit of background for how I came to that. It has the potential to create a legacy of properties and new buildings, and that lot exists today. What if they wait 100 years to build? You know, so there's no end in sight for those legacy lots, and then we're putting a new structure on that lot. It also would create kind of a two-tiered system where those existing lots are super valuable all of a sudden and have a whole bunch more rights than people that are trying to create a lot today. So it is a tricky one. The other piece that I would say is, as I mentioned, we do intend to apply to NSFM for some funding, and most of what we would be looking for through that funding is technical expertise. So one of the things that we could do, and I would expect we would do if we even proceed with investigating this, is to come back with what sort of impact is this? How many, I know the question came up when we did the lakefront overlay, how many lots are gonna be undevelopable? And that was a very tricky question to answer. That's the kind of analysis that we could try to get very close to an answer on through a consultant, to say, if we were to implement X, Y, and Z as in terms of regulations, do an analysis and try to give us how many lots are going to be impacted by this. The final piece I'll say before I turn it over is those existing lots that don't meet the regulations, absolutely there are going to be some that pretty much have no option. In other cases, and I realize this is soft comfort to those that would be directly impacted, but you know, some of those lots potentially could be consolidated, or you know, there are options that if it was possible to, you know, do an assembly or other reconfiguration of land, that they might be able to meet it too. So it's not it wouldn't necessarily be a death sentence for all of them. It would depend on the specific situation, the neighboring owners, and whether there was, you know, any ability to, but it certainly would have a significant impact, and there would be no guarantee that they would be developable. So anyway, I'll turn it over to council.
Warden Weller.
Yeah, well, I just think, like, it's an existing lot, but you can still, raise the ground level as long, and things like that, to make it comply. You know, I mean, I will say that all of the oceanfront lots are owned by somebody. So, you know, I think the rules need to apply, but I can see that if I bought a lot 5 years ago, planned to build a cottage onto it, didn't get around to it yet, that I'd be pissed off if I wasn't able to. I mean, I would be. But I don't know how you can just say existing lots, because the whole damn country's owned by somebody.
Counselor,
Thank you. I guess I would ask a question, Sam. So if it comes to pass that we write this into the regulation that your land, because it doesn't meet the size, as Gar spoke, what would be the recourse to the landowner? Say, just whoa, I've been paying taxes on this oceanfront property for 100 years. So could they come back to the municipality and say, you know what, I want my money back? You know, I'm just thinking, like, what recourse would the landowner have?
Possibly none. I think it depends,
Okay.
if it's done right and the purpose is right. Like, so if we're sticking with land safety, property safety that's
Okay,
being
yeah.
recognized, they're gonna be certainly annoyed.
Oh, yeah.
But the point of the regulation is not to deny them development rights.
It's a safety
It's a safety issue, and, so I think we're on safer ground, so to speak, than if we just pass a restrictive zoning because we think it fits with community character. You know, that kind of state, because that's more of it's a softer issue. You're saying, oh, I think the community character says blah, 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 and that's what we're doing. And then somebody says, well, you just zoned my property to uselessness, as opposed to saying, no, nothing to do with community character. This is a safety issue. That's what we're doing. So,
Yeah, we're safe.
Counselor Church?
Yeah, I totally agree with what our solicitor said, that I think the rules should apply for all. So if we base it on safety, I think we're good. If people can infill to make it higher, fine. But I don't think we should exempt ones that exist. It just doesn't seem right. If it's unsafe, it's unsafe. So that's just my take on it. Unfortunately, for that reason, and I'm sure they couldn't get insurance or anything if it's that unsafe, they wouldn't be, you know, if they're putting a property there, they're not gonna be able to get insurance. I know that. I know ones that were denied insurance for that reason, so. I think if we deal with the safety aspect of it, we're safer than trying to, you know, the character of the area. We don't like it because it's certainly gonna impact the property owner on the other side of the road. That's happening on the 329, we see it, but that's another issue.
I'm gonna go to Counselor Bremner before. Sam, sorry.
Thank you, Deputy Warden Vino. I agree with the solicitor, and I agree with that. We may be the bearer of bad news, but when people build, and we saw it the other day when a gentleman said he can't get insurance anymore. Made a presentation to us and said his insurance, he was notified his insurance was canceled because of the issues that we're having. I think we're exactly right. We have to look at the safety issue of this whole thing, base it on that, use that approach to it, and be realistic that times have changed, our environment is changing, our coasts are changing, and without looking at it that way, we would be wrong. We have to look at it that way, and we can't give exemptions to people that just think they have some unique or something special in certain ways. And if they can afford and they have the right process and the right land use possibilities, then they do what they have to do within our rules and go that way. Thank you.
Solicitor Lamy?
yeah, I was just picking up on what Councilor Church and Councilor Bremner mentioned. I'm aware that in other jurisdictions, once you start having these kind of regulations, properties become uninsurable if they don't meet the regulations. And also they become unmortgageable because banks aren't interested in them either. So, and which is another reason why we have to be very careful what we're doing here, because we don't want to, you know, sideswipe somebody and make their property uninsurable and unmortgageable. For us, it's a good reason.
Counselor Connors.
Thank you. I really like to jump to number 3 in terms of the options when we get to the overall motion, of course, the fact, just having the discussion around additional public sessions. You know, I'm not sure what form that would be, whether we go back out to all those communities again, or additional, or just do a flyer out to people. I don't know, right? But I think that we need to let people know what we're doing, as we did with our municipal plan review, and I'm sure we're going to. I'm in full agreement with the solicitor's comments as well as the councillors around the table. And I know that it seems like a short time that I've been here, but yet a bit of an extensive time. So 12 years is not long, but man, things have changed in 12 years since I've been here at the table. And I'm happy to say that as a group and as an individual, I believe that when we know better, we do better. So we've come a long way, I think, in the 12 years that I've been here in terms of looking to the overall public good. I think, really, I do, with some of this stuff. Thank you.
Counselor Asif.
Thank you. Tina, I agree with you exactly, and I'll tell you why. When you started your presentation, we did the first one at Western Shore, and I had so many calls. I did the same thing. Everybody came there and they thought it was upstairs. There was no lights on upstairs, as you know. So I had people call me and said, well, I was there and there's nobody there. And I said, well, it's downstairs. So to Tina's point, and I think that's because I knew there were going to be a lot of people there, but I think was sort of not anybody's fault, but just to know that it was downstairs instead of upstairs. And that's why I agree with Tina. I think we should host some more sessions.
But I presume that, you know, the first round was just to get there was no proposal. It was just talking about it. If we're providing, this committee's providing some guidance to staff to kind of come up with some ideas, then when we go back out again, we'll be talking about specific ideas. And that will generate a lot more feedback, I think, than we've had before. So I don't think that will be an issue. I will weigh in, it's been weighed in on a lot already, but I agree with Warden Weber. All the lots that we have are existing lots. So saying that somehow there's an exemption for existing lots makes no sense, because all those little scraps that have just brought this conversation forward would then be exempted and we'll have done nothing. So I agree 100% on that, you know. What do I write? Jeez, my notes are so bad. I can't even read. Oh, every rezoning that we contemplate as a council has the same issue. You know, this idea of expropriation of rights. You know, so this is not new to this specific issue. So every time we talk about land use in any way, you're going to have those that come forward and say that you've expropriated my land, you've expropriated my dreams. So we're trying to find the balance to give as much flexibility and balance off against safety. That's what I'm hearing from this committee, and that sounds good. You know, if we had in our area a region that was prone to sinkholes, you know, like they do, say, around Windsor area or Hants, you know, we would probably be trying to identify those and talking about the sorts of structures that we would want to permit to be constructed in those areas because of the geotechnical conditions. This I see as no different. We have a special situation here where we have a lot of coastline, and it carries with it inherent land use risks. We are in the business of regulating land use. We know what these risks are, and it's then incumbent on us to come up with some sort of framework for those that want to develop those lands so that they can have appropriate protections, because the people that develop, everything's temporary in this world. You may develop it, but you won't own it forever. Forever's a long time. I only plan to live so long. I don't know about the rest of you, maybe you're gonna live forever, but you know, these things live on past those that develop them, and they're motivated by things like greed. And you know, safety could be secondary or third or fourth on the list. So having a rudimentary framework, that's why it's so important to do this. So, those are my comments. Sorry about me not being able to read my notes. Okay.
So, yeah, no, great, thank you all this has been a great discussion. And so just for just to make sure that I've got things clear here. So, of the options here, I think we're getting a little bit of a mix of one and three. So council, we've had the discussion today. Before we end, I'd just like to review what I believe we're gonna proceed with in terms of further investigation. So just to clarify, would council like us to go do a little more work on these topics and then schedule a series of meetings to, and again, this likely wouldn't have the final numbers for what the vertical setback, but it would be, we are proceeding with a vertical setback. We are proceeding with investigation of a horizontal setback. We are going to investigate limited expansion of existing structures, and existing lots will have to comply with the new regulations. So we could go out and focus on those topics and get feedback.
I think there has to be some provision for those that, like in a loss situation, like, I don't know how you deal with that, you know, under the, if you wanna do, if this committee's sage advice to council is to allow some amount of expansion, we have to somehow contemplate those that are in a total loss situation that they're able to
Right.
rebuild. I don't know how I don't know how you can do both.
Right.
That's for you to figure out.
Yeah.
But I think, based on the body language I observed here, that was the will of this committee to allow people to continue on if they were to lose their entire structure.
Oh, yeah, well, should they, yeah, build on the same
So
footprint.
just allowing just an incremental increase wouldn't maybe satisfy that requirement, so somehow you're
A
gonna
bit
have
of
to.
both.
Yeah,
Yeah, now in terms of the further public sessions, so obviously all options are on the table. We did three, previously. We could go back to the same locations as sort of this is round two, here's the follow-up. We could, all options are on the table.
CAO
Yeah.
McGuire?
I'm sensing that council does want to go out
Yes,
again.
yes.
But I'm wondering if council wants to go out again before you see something come back to
Right,
you.
that's kind of the,
So,
Well, I
so,
think it'd be nice to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if there are people complain to us, at least we know what they're talking about.
sure.
I
okay.
think maybe another, like, go out, draft some.
Actual draft of
some
regulations.
draft
Yep.
that we can work with.
Absolutely.
Bring it back to this committee, and then the committee can give some direction on whether or not you want to use your planning advisory committee and what further public engagement looks like.
Right.
Probably something more extensive than just a public information meeting that we would normally have. That's probably where you can say, okay, we want to do, rather than just one public information session that we would normally do, and then a public hearing after that, right? Prior to that, we're gonna do engagement at a more extensive level, so that it comes back here.
Yes.
And then you decide whether or not you're gonna refer to your planning advisory committees or go to further public engagement.
Yeah, that sounds great to me. Yep, absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you all. This has been a good discussion,
Oh, boy.
and more to come.
All right. Let's see here. Do you guys wanna take a little break?
Looks like it.
Okay, great. All right, welcome back. Next topic is the business facade program. Let's go.
All right, thanks so much, Deputy Warden. So yeah, we're gonna have a discussion today about the business facade program. What I wanted to do is go through the background of how we got here very briefly, provide the recommendations that we are putting forward. Everything is obviously up for discussion, but I wanted to go through the recommendations that we've landed on. And then we have some bigger questions at the end. So everything is up for discussion, but we do have three what we consider the big questions about the project at the end that we would like your direction on, so we can bring back the program for official approval at some point of time in the near future.
This is different than the community beautification program?
This is part of the community beautification and revitalization program, so it was one of the key tactics that was identified there. So that is a good segue to the next page of how we got here. So there are a number of plans and documents that have been approved over the last number of years that have mentioned the need for a business facade program within the municipality. So they include the ones that are listed here. So our business retention and expansion action plan from 2023. It's been included in the strategic priorities for this council from 2025 through 2029. The growth plan also indicated that we should be looking to implement a business facade program within the municipality. And as the warden just mentioned, our community beautification and revitalization plan that was recently approved also indicated that this was a short-term action for 2025-26. So this is why it's being brought forward for your consideration and discussion. So when it comes to this, similar to the discussion that we just had about the coastal protection regulations that you're considering, what we wanted to start by is focusing on why we're doing this. So the reasons behind this, which were outlined very succinctly in the growth plan. So essentially the goals of the program really are to look at how we can, starting with the community beautification program, how we can really support rejuvenating our community cores. So the idea is to try to make them more attractive for visitors and residents alike, so that we can spur having people stay in the communities longer, which leads to more spending at our businesses in the community cores, essentially. So it's spending more time in those community cores. Secondarily, well, just as importantly, it's a way for us to leverage private capital. So by us contributing to the beautification of our downtown cores, we can spur private industry in reinvesting in downtowns and in their business storefronts. We want to create attractive places that are what we call human scale. So I'm sure many of you have heard this before, but the focus is on getting people out of vehicles and pedestrians walking around the communities, because people who spend more time in communities tend to spend also more money in the communities, which helps really to encourage economic activity with our local businesses. And it also contributes to the revitalization of our community cores, and it helps to preserve a sense of local community character and pride in our community as well. So I think at one of our priority sessions, not to quote somebody in this meeting, but you can never go wrong when you focus on beauty. I think I heard somebody say when we were talking about our strategic priorities, but they might not even remember they said that at the time. But that's one of the things that we are trying to focus on when it comes to this business facade program.
Must have been Tina.
I won't call him out, but he's leading the meeting.
I say a lot of things, I don't remember them all.
Yeah, exactly. So what I wanted to do next is just kind of go through the program details that we're recommending. Please feel free to interject at any time, or you can just wait until the big questions at the end. It's your choice. Just interrupt me, because I might not notice if somebody wants to interrupt. So on our recommendations, what we've done is we've looked at the different facade programs that exist both within around the province, but also with what we're trying to achieve with our goals there. And what we are recommending includes that the municipality would fund up to 50% of approved eligible costs up to $5,000. So we'll get to this as part of the big question a little bit later, but there are a number of these programs around the province. They range from about 1,000 in matching funds to 10,000 in matching funds. We have come to the recommendation of somewhere in the middle, of around 5,000 for matching funds per project. So in line with our growth plan, what we are recommending is the purpose of this is to help encourage commercial revitalization in our community cores. So we want this to be open to customer-facing businesses. So the idea is businesses that directly work with customers. So we're trying to, there are people who are trying to attract people through their front door.
Let me pause you right there.
Sure thing.
Councilor Azif has something.
Thank you. Yeah, I just, why I wanted to raise this is, I don't know if anybody recalls, but we talked about the signage at Island View, by the Island View Restaurant. And I think this, you know, we need to either take that in or update it, because there's supposed to be businesses in there, and so many people look at that. So I don't know if it would have anything to do with this.
I think this is more like private sector partnership on their own private property.
Yeah, because I think
That's
Tina
more like
knows probably
wayfinding.
more about it.
That's a
yeah.
different thing, I think, isn't it?
I'm not aware of the signed conversation, so I would
We can
defer.
talk about
Okay.
It was signage that was done, by the well, I think they're still operating, but Blue Nose
Oh,
Coast.
Blue Nose Coast, yes.
Um,
Okay.
so it was signage that was done by then, so we might need to, reach out and sort of see who owns it,
How we
are they
can-
still,
how we can deal with it,
yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to see it either taken out
Or
or
update.
updated, because it's,
Yep.
people, so many people look at it. It's, because it's right there in the park, actually. I think the actual sign is in the park, on the park property, Walrose Park property.
I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think it might be, yeah.
Looks like it's in Island View, but it may not be.
Pardon me?
It's close to Island View.
Close. It's, yeah, right, if it's not, it's on one or the other, I would.
Property, yeah, it's in the parking lot.
So I don't know, so what? Are we
It's
gonna look-
outside of the scope of this
Staff are
discussion.
gonna look into it.
Start, yeah, because, no, the reason why I ask is because if we decide to update it, and there's a community group within the community that wants to take on this,
But this is to do with private land owners that own commercial properties and wanting to improve their facades for community.
this isn't
So
the
it's
same.
on, this is on, the purpose of this discussion is to talk about how we can help commercial landowners that have forward facing businesses to improve their facades for the benefit of all of the community. That's the purpose of this. That's sort of a separate discussion, I would say, that we need, maybe the warden can discuss it with you in council.
just that, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, go.
All right, Councilor
Sorry.
Connors.
Sorry, yeah, but I'm just looking at the entirety of Brian's presentation, and we are gonna get to eligibility, businesses plus not-for-profit organizations. So maybe I'm jumping ahead.
Jumping
but the
ahead, but we'll
fact
get
is,
there, yes, yeah.
we are actually, or should be entertaining, what Councillor Asif is bringing forward in terms of whatever we're talking about here, because it's important. So, yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Can't wait for that discussion when we get there. Carry on, please.
All right, perfect, yeah, so just to kind of reiterate that, the purpose of this program is to support businesses and potentially not-for-profits in revitalizing their direct facade for their buildings. So it would be not dissimilar to a grant program, where people apply to the program to be able to undertake renovations to the exterior of their property in a way that beautifies the property. Right now, we have said here that our recommendation is it would be open to customer-facing businesses and not-for-profits within the hamlet zones and the village of Chester. So we'll get to that a little bit more later. The other thing that we wanted to recommend here is that it would be a multi-year ongoing program, but with a maximum funding amount per year, unless council were to increase this. So it would be something that would be funded through, Tim's not here, so he can't speak, he won't be able to give me the precise words, but through the Economic Development Reserve is the intention, is to fund this through the Economic Development Reserve to a maximum per year, unless council deems that our applications were sufficient that we should expand it in any given year. So.
Can I jump in quickly?
Yes, for sure.
Because on that topic, are you suggesting the applicant could then apply year on year, or would they have to have some sort of break in between applications?
So we haven't provided a recommendation on that. The way that we currently, as it's written, they would be eligible to apply in a subsequent year. However, we will get to the application nitty-gritty, which is it's going to be reviewed internally. So somebody who had recently applied and been approved would likely not be as top of the list as somebody who had not applied previously through the internal review.
I don't think that's worth discussion.
Yeah.
Counselor Church, let's hear from you.
Is it on there? Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it should be multi-year. We have to, if they're doing beautification one year, I think maybe minimum the following year, but it shouldn't just be ongoing. I don't see it that way. I think it should be something to improve the facade. You know, are we going to pay every year for flower baskets and things, you know? We have to look
Okay,
at that.
just responding to that, so when we say multi-year, our intention is that this is not a one-and-done program, so it wouldn't just be 2025, 26, 27, it would also be in place in 27, 28. And currently, similar to other granting programs, applicants who apply in 1 year are still eligible to apply in a subsequent year if they have some new project that they are
Okay,
looking to do.
that's-
For this, that's why we have put it that way, but it obviously is up to the direction of council. If council wants us to have a gap between there, we absolutely could. It's been modeled after existing grant programs, which allow applicants to reapply in subsequent years.
Okay. Okay, that's fair.
I think that if this committee's said recommendation would be to allow applicants to go year after year, I think somewhere, personally, I think that somewhere in that policy, you should specify that multi-year applicants would be given less priority.
That's right, yeah, okay.
You know, I think it should be explicit so that, you know, should there be a budget of, say, $30,000 annually, and that you're getting near the top of that budget, then those that come year on year would be at the bottom of the list.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it should be in our policy framework so that it's clear long after this committee and council are gone.
Perfect, and just one final point of clarification there, when we say multi-year, we weren't intending for this to be, you apply for funding now and you can have that same funding for the next, it's, the funding that is provided is within a single year, it's just the program is multi-year, so the intention is to keep the program
And we
going.
may get into this a bit later, but I would never expect this to be operational sort of operational where you're buying flower baskets every year and charging the municipality for your flower baskets 50%. To me, it should be capital in nature. And I guess you're gonna get to that.
We are going to get to that.
Okay.
Yeah, and when
I
it comes
say
to
no more.
eligibility, and
Carry on, good sir.
however, that is a very good point that we will get to in a very quick second. Yeah,
Okay.
okay. So right now, and again, we're gonna cut, just to try to head off some jumping ahead here, not that you can't jump ahead.
We love it.
But to head off some jumping ahead, applications in its initial implementation. Applications, we are looking for them to preserve historical design elements to the greatest extent possible and to ensure that they fit and are compatible with adjacent materials. So we'll get to why we're saying that at the beginning of the implementation a little bit later, because there's some other recommendations that are coming once the 2030 plan review has been completed. We'll get to that. So that's how we're kind of trying to talk about what we're looking for from the applications, because what defines beauty? All right, so when it comes to eligibility, this is when we're transitioning to that, the conversation about what is eligible. The quick thing is in line with our growth plan, the location that has been recommended by our growth plan and what we are trying to focus on is our community cores. So the location that we are suggesting and recommending is that this is limited to our hamlets and the village of Chester in zones where commercial uses are permitted. So that the key being is because the point behind this, remembering the goals of the program, is to revitalize our community cores with customer-facing businesses, the places that we would most likely expect those to happen, where we're trying to gather people in a center, are our hamlets and the village of Chester. And that lines up with our growth plan, which recommended a lot of those things when it comes to our investments around things like wastewater, et cetera, et cetera. So the hamlets and the village of Chester really are the priority that we are recommending. Again, we've talked about this a few times, customer facing and exterior improvements only, so nothing within the building. The point is for exteriors to create a better streetscape. Again, this is matching funding because we want this to leverage private investment in addition to our contributions, so it would be a maximum of 50% of the eligible costs. In line with our desire to ensure that this is with businesses that are active. We are recommending up-to-date registration with the Registry of Joint Stocks as a way for us to be able to determine that. And this one kind of, it goes to how we will eventually get to the big question about how we review these. But one of our desires in this is to ensure that we aren't working in silos with other parts of the organization. So in conversations internally, we had a conversation with our development team about the fact that part of the review, we want to ensure that any applied for renovations are in compliance with our bylaws. So we would not be approving funding for something that is not actually able to be done. So if somebody wanted to put up a fence and the fence is actually not allowed to be permitted, we would not want to approve funding for something that then our development team will not issue a permit for. So we have said we need to have an upfront review by our development team prior to funding approval. And again, I've mentioned this a couple times, so I won't go through it again, but the improvements are intended to target things like human scale improvements, curb appeal. We have thrown in here as well the fact that anything that is welcoming is what we're looking for, so improving accessibility is another important piece. And I'll stop.
Counselor.
Yeah, I'm just looking, because we're just matching funding, a maximum of so if someone wants to do I have someone in mind, but, something that's gonna cost $25,000.
We'll only give them 5.
You're only gonna get them up to 5?
So as recommended, we have a maximum of 5,000.
Okay, I must have
to-
missed it, or,
yeah.
sorry.
To a
must have
maximum of
missed the
50%.
slide.
So like
Okay,
there's the two.
that
so
would
it's
make sense, yeah.
50% or
Yeah,
5,000.
okay, I must have missed that, I was otherwise somewhere else, thank you.
Okay. Good. All right. So the next slide has a sampling of what we would consider to be eligible project costs. And this goes to the whole point behind capital improvements. This is not intended to be providing flowers on the exterior of somebody's building. Landscaping, however, yes. So the point behind this is that anything that would improve the exterior, the facade of a business is what we would be looking at being eligible. These are some examples of what that looks like, but you'll notice that these are intended to be capital in nature. So, yeah. In the nitty gritty of this is, I won't go through each of these individually, but if there's anything here that piques your interest, please jump on it. But the point is, like, we've been looking at how we would review this, the process that we would go through internally to do this. So some of the key things are the fact that we would only issue the grant once the work is completed. So that's slightly different than most of our other grants where we issue them up front. Here, we want to ensure that the work is completed before we issue the grant. So that's something that we want to ensure. This is going to come back to a big question, so I will focus on this one a little bit. Our recommendation is that we would review these internally. So it would be reviewed by staff to determine that it is in line with the goals of the program. I did want to mention there is an option to consider putting this with one of our existing committees of council, such as the planning committee, for example. It could be something that they would be willing to look at as a subcommittee of something that they're working on. But our recommendation is to keep this staff internally. When we were going through this, we have noticed other locations that put it out to a committee such as a planning committee or a heritage committee. They always end up bringing it back in. So that's why our recommendation is to do it at the staff level. And the other thing that I just did want to point out here, besides the fact that we would be actively promoting this and going through this, is the fact that our intention for this is that all costs we would have a deadline for when the costs have to be spent and submitted. So the intention is not to approve and have this carry over at the end of a fiscal year. We would expect that the improvements would be done by X date, and if not, they would need to reapply in order to get the funding.
So in terms of timing, would you expect the applications to be selected by, say, sometime in the spring and then
Yes.
the work carried out
Yeah, so
In the
our
winter?
intention,
before the winter?
different than, so I know we have a number of different funding programs. Our intention would be to have an application deadline, issue approve all of them at a single time, and then have people, so we wouldn't be accepting applications throughout the course of the year. So the intention would be in the spring, and then give them the summer through until the early fall to complete, and then have all of the receipts by, let's say, February. Yeah.
Good.
Okay, so I kind of teased this one going back a little while, looking forward. So in the approved growth plan that was from 2025, there were 2 recommendations that came out of this. And the reason I'm pointing these out is because once these recommendations have been implemented, assuming they are approved and implemented by council when they come back, these 2 recommendations, as I understand it, are going to be part of our 2030 municipal review, and they include the development of design guideline documents for development agreements and comprehensive development areas, and the introduction of design requirements for site plan approval developments within the hamlet zones. So were those 2 recommendations to be implemented by council, where we put together design documents that would be used for these purposes, the intention would be that our internal staff in reviewing beautification requests would align with the design requirements that have been asked for when it comes to these recommendations for what a appropriate design in a hamlet zone looks like, for example. So if we have approved a design document for the hamlet zone, we would align our review of the beautification program with that. So I wanted to point that out. So with that, the 3 big questions that we wanted to kind of land on at the end of this is, so we have recommended, as I said, $5,000 as the matching amount. I mentioned that within Nova Scotia, it ranges from 1 to 10. So we wanted to get your direction on that. Does that look right? Does 5,000 align with what council would like to consider? And I did want to point out here, the responses that have been seen across the province seem to, the uptake is more significant as the price goes up. So which is completely natural. Like for certain places where they only provide 1,000 in matching funds, you can imagine they don't get very many applications. Whereas when they offer 10,000, they get quite a few applications. So that's where we wanted to kind of have that conversation.
Councillor Connors, sorry.
Thank you. Sorry, Brian. I know we're almost at the end, but I just want to ask this question now. So are we talking matching cash, or are we talking matching in kind?
The intention is cash.
Okay, no, just good, as long as we're clear on that,
I like
right? So
that.
that's good, no problem, thanks.
Carry on.
Are there any, no, that was, I'm going to, so it seems like, reading the room, that 5,000 is in line with what people are comfortable with?
I
Okay.
think we try it and see how it goes.
So the second thing that we wanted to get direction from council on as a big question is around these programs. Some are only open to commercial businesses, some are open to commercial businesses and not-for-profits, some are open to all commercial properties. So we have recommended businesses plus not-for-profits, so we have indicated both within that defined hamlet and Village of Chester area. So we would just want to make sure that that is aligned with council, and if there's any direction that you'd like to provide.
Councillor Connors.
Certainly, so I'm wavering, hung up a little bit on the opening it up to any commercial property. And I know we're just starting this discussion now, so I'll just start it. So, right now, I'm good with businesses, or commercial, those businesses that look to attract customers, I'm not sure what you're, businesses that directly look to attract customers, I think, is what you had said earlier. So, I mean, as a potential, I'm not saying that's what we're going with, but that's where I would like to land, as well as not-for-profits. However, I'm a little concerned with, I think you had said also earlier, around not-for-profits that have a facility, per se. Yeah, so I guess I'm just wondering about not-for-profits that have properties within a hamlet area, and we know of them within our municipality, like a community bandstand maybe. I know we own the one in Chester, a basin, so I mean, that's out the window, but let's pretend it was a community group that had that one. In Hubbards, I believe, again as well, community bandstand or gathering area, things like that. But also too, I'm cognizant of the fact that we have our growth strategy and the discussions that have taken place by going into those communities and meeting with organizations, at least in Gold River, Western Shore, Hubbards, and New Ross, and I think maybe in Chester, Chester Basin, we're still looking for a community group, maybe? Okay. So I'm not afraid to admit that I'm a little gray, I'm a little confused in terms of how that may merge or meld with that hamlet area development or improvements compared to what we're talking about here. And let's just use New Ross as an example. So I know you've been in New Ross, I know you've talked with them on a couple of occasions. They're ready to go out to the community, they're ready to do the invite to community organizations and get behind that, I believe. So in New Ross, we have the community bandstand. So that's a not-for-profit that owns and operates and does upgrades to that community bandstand, and it's in the hamlet area. But it's not a structure that attracts customers, but it attracts people to stop, slow down, park their motorbikes, I've seen it, and walk, and put monies into those stores. So am I getting ahead of myself by thinking that maybe this is the program that the New Ross Regional Development Society, if they were an eligible group to apply, like Abdallah had just referenced in Western Shore with the signage idea, right? People pulling over, stopping, and looking to see what's available in that area, compared to what you had been talking about earlier, months ago, or a month ago maybe, about the whole idea of development in the hamlet.
So, the intention, this is the way I say, the intention and how we have set these two up would be the fact that the community beautification program that we are talking about with the New Ross Development
And
Area
all the groups.
Association and
Yeah.
all the groups
Yeah.
would be the sort of thing that would deal with those public spaces that
Public
are not
spaces.
business focused.
Okay.
So this
Not-
would be, the intention of this is to be focused towards a business that is looking to improve their facade, or a not-for-profit, let's say, that operates, I'm trying to think, I don't want to name anybody specifically, but a not-for-profit that owns, for example, a storefront, or has an area that people can actively drop into, that they're improving their facade as well. The intention or the recommendation behind this is not to improve public spaces like a bandstand or a park or things like that. That's what the other stream is for, is to work with community groups to improve this.
No, that's what I
so-
just said,
yeah.
I said all that.
Yeah,
I did it.
exactly.
I did
Yeah.
say all that.
You said all that, it's just,
Yeah, I did.
so the appropriate funding source for, I would think, that organization would be
yeah,
the one that
yeah.
is currently being led by the community. This
Yeah.
one is more. the
So how,
business.
if a business, if a nonprofit owns a facility, how would that not qualify under that other stream? How would it be ineligible in the hamlet area if the community came together and said to the municipality that we like the idea of landscaping, signage, banners on the street poles, and, you know, the nonprofit organization owns the DMV building or whatever it might have been in Western Shore, and that's part of our downtown, it's part of our hamlet. How would it not be eligible under that other stream?
The one that's being led by the community? I'm
Yes.
just making sure I'm,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So technically, if the community decided
Got
that
behind
that
it.
was what they
Yeah.
wanted to do, was improve that space with
Yeah.
community funds to,
Yeah.
then it would be eligible.
Yeah.
This is, this though, would be something that, the way that we're recommending it
Yeah.
for a not-for-profit, if the not-for-profit had that storefront building in the center of a hamlet area and
Yeah.
they wanted to do the improvements, it could be applied for under this as well, is what we're currently recommending. Okay.
And I know we're getting into the weeds in terms of examples, but let's use the examples of our legions. They're in hamlet areas. They're very crucial, very important. They're attracting customers. They are. And so they would then qualify with this program as it is now,
As
right?
recommended, yes.
If we're talking about, I'm not saying it's a given yet, because we have to decide. But yeah, okay, so I'm getting clearer.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Bremner?
Thank you, Deputy Warden Vino, through you to the speaker. My mind's all over the place. This is exciting, first of all, but there are some questions. I think with every business that I look at, somewhere in our municipality, they have a remote sign that has either been forgotten about, that has been let fall to pieces, that has never been cleared in bushes. Is there any connection we can make with this, that if they do something, they actually address that? Because it becomes a bit distasteful and something they either have just forgotten about, never considered, whatever. There's something that we have to make sure that if they're going to do that, there is a reason that they want to maintain it, that we're giving some direction or thought.
Just responding direction of like, if council were to direct us to open this up to that, we obviously consider it. At the present moment, it is not intended to do anything off-site of a storefront in the center of the community. But obviously, council could provide direction otherwise.
I just think they're attached because it's the business, but that's another question.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that we need to circle back with council still on this, on the signage program and the off-premise signage program, so, yeah.
Counselor Church?
Yeah, thank you. I'll just give a perfect example for this would be the Shop on Central. May want to improve their facade to attract people, and they're a nonprofit.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a perfect example. I mean, we can say there's some in other communities, the Arc in Bridgewater, that are right in central business area, so, you know, Riverside, which is in the community of Queens County. There's lots of examples of nonprofits.
Warden Weber?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I don't, we have a community signage program where we put one up in Hubbard's, we're talking about putting them up in other communities, and that's a whole other thing that we're doing. And even though this doesn't give the business direct funding to upgrade or improve or fix their broken signage, it gives them money for the other things they're doing, which should make it easier for them to spend their own money on the signage, so, you know, I guess so. Yeah. Only goes so far.
Yeah, so, I mean, my thoughts are that, the same as most, I think, in the room, that this is really intended to be for structures that are owned by either a business or a not-for-profit, but they have that storefront, in some sort of commercial area. Now, designated by commercial zoning, I presume, versus areas in which people travel, that's, what happens if we have like a commercial property, but it's really not in the walkable area? Now, I don't know if this is a good example, but if you had a marina, it's in the back, nobody's walking there, there is no real store frontage, but they're commercial, maybe. Does that then become like eligible, or do we wanna have like a map and say, in these geographic areas, this is where this applies, and we'll have like a map that goes along with this policy? How do you envision rolling this out and determining who's, who is eligible?
Yeah, so to, maybe I'll start with that map suggestion and recommendation. We looked at that because Bridgewater actually has a map directly located on King Street that says only businesses within this area are eligible for the program. And a flip side of that, kind of given a different example, is the region of Queens says any business anywhere is eligible as long as they are on a commercial property.
Could be out in White Point, doesn't matter.
Exactly. We have, the recommendation that we're putting forward is our areas is Hamlets and Village of Chester, so anything that's within that area, but as part of the review, the internal review, the question is this something that is actually customer facing where people could walk up to the building? And so in that case, not to speak for the review committee that hasn't even been established yet internally, but the point, like a marina that doesn't necessarily have a walk up or there's no sidewalks leading to it and it's all driving in traffic, it probably would not pass the criteria of being a walkable customer facing storefront is what I would suggest.
But if you had such a map,
Then you could
then
do
you
away with
wouldn't have to make
Yeah.
that determination, would you?
You wouldn't.
Because you know where the walkable areas are, don't you?
Yes, the flip side though is that if a business did open outside that area and want it to be walkable because they were on a sidewalk, but we hadn't included them in the map, we would need to go back and
Revise
readjust
the
our
map.
Yeah, so,
That's not,
it's not difficult, but it's part of,
Well, your
it's something we
hamlet
need to
areas
do.
are gonna grow over time.
yeah, I guess, I prefer not to make it so that there's ambiguity to the applicant, a map is, personally, I like, that's why zoning works. So you know if you're in the zone, these are your rights and these are your restrictions. We can have that debate, I suppose, but I think we kind of have a sense of where we're gonna be trying to attract those walkable areas. I would be in favor of seeing a map
Yep.
and having that debate, but I'm one person on this committee.
Yeah, It's really, either way, it's easy for us to do, so it's not a problem, yeah.
Okay.
Final big question? Is that, okay. So we've already kind of discussed this, but I do want to get the direction and feedback is, when it comes to the review process, our recommendation is internal by putting together a staff committee that would review it, that is made up of various departments, various teams, so that we could ensure this, including absolutely essential that our development team reviews it to ensure that the application would be within any bylaws or permitting requirements. So that's our recommendation. Just wanted to get any feedback.
I like that as well, and that, again, though, that makes it, taking any ambiguity out of the policy is for your protection then.
Yep.
Because, if we have anything ambiguous, like, you know, do people walk up to this business or not, you know, then you get into an argument situation, but if it's something like a map, it's like, you're either inside the boundary or you're not, too bad, so sad, you know, that's, protects you, which is what we want to do as policymakers.
That's all, unless there's any more comments. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Great.
Methane regulations.
Oh, boy, we're talking methane.
Coastal facades to methane.
All right.
That sounds fun.
All right, so. Big question. Does it cover paint?
See,
Well, thank you. So just do a quick run through on just some of the new regulations that have just come out recently. So just try to give you a sense of what that'll mean for going forward for Kaiser Meadow and just the operation related to that. So a lot of the material here is based on a presentation that Environment and Climate Control Canada presented earlier in the month. So you'll see a lot of excerpts from some of that presentation. So the final regulations were adopted last December. Main outcome is they're trying to get to a 50% reduction of methane from Canadian landfills by 2035. And so this is basically attempt to create a consistent framework for how everybody gets that across the country. So, next one. So in terms of what triggers are, so there's two main pathways that they're looking at. So it's basically is all based on one or two methods of assessing how much in place residual waste you have. So one sort of looks at sort of the longer term one, and as you see in the slide, we're more triggered on that first one, that we have over that 250,000 tons in place, and we're still taking waste as of January 2010. There is a smaller one which we probably meet as well, but the first criteria we definitely meet in terms of that, so we're pulled into that. Now, I'd say the slight relief is that there are exemptions for accepting more inert materials, if you will, so it looks like the first gen site meets that because it hasn't been accepting residual waste in quite some time, and all that's going up there now is the C&D side, so that appears to exempt that part of the landfill out, but it's the second gen site that will get pulled in, so. That side. So we have an initial assessment that's due in June. So the ECC has created their own methane generation model that they've circulated to everybody. So we'll have to crunch the numbers through that model and determine what our outcome looks like. But based on, I would say, other reporting we've done based on last year, we are more likely exceed that threshold of what pulls us into requiring some control methods going forward. So based on that, there's a number of other triggers, but I sort of blocked out the ones that don't really apply to us. So essentially for us, we do the assessment this year based on what we likely expect the outcome of that assessment is going to be. We have to be as much as possible up and running with the new landfill gas control system by January 1, 2029. And although there is a mechanism for deferral for up to 2 years, it's fairly clear in the regulations that we can't be ragging the puck on that. So basically, we gotta get done, or we have to have a pretty darn good excuse of why we aren't up and running at that point. So basically, it comes down to we can't get the parts to the system that's been approved, that sort of thing, so. In terms of what that kicks us off in terms of capital and operating requirements, on the capital side, basically we have to have some technology that destroys the methane, or which basically converts into carbon dioxide, so either flare, some sort of filtering system. Direct venting is no longer going to be allowed except for if we have the system down for maintenance, so very short-term duration, but direct venting like used to be done, sort of some of the current practice in a couple spots in the site. Feds will not accept that anymore, so. So with that, we'll have the destruction technology, but also with that, we'll have a field of extraction wells to get the gas, to try to pull the gas out, and the piping network to send it all to ultimate processing. So a rough order of magnitude, that's going to be probably in million-ish dollar range. No millions. It's not, and then particularly as the site progresses out further, we'll have to keep going. So yes, I'd say my former life, we had a design team that did this all the time. So yeah, I think that's where there may be some sticker shock with some jurisdictions. This is not a cheap exercise on capital side. And then operating, the regulations require ongoing monitoring each year, and also as well inspections of the system and that, so, and all the record keeping and everything else that goes with it, so that's in and of itself probably in the tens to hundreds of thousands a year, depending on the scale and scope of the whole system, so.
Councilor Asif.
Thank you. I just probably a stupid question, but is it the amount of methane that is generated? Is there any technology that can use it in some fashion?
Yes, if there's enough scale, then that's, or I'll say a number of former client, let's say previous life, they were at a scale that they could actually either, if they couldn't get to enough purity, that they could run it through basically generators and basically feed into the electrical grid, electrical power. And these regulations do actually support that model. And if they were fortunate enough that it was a good enough quality that they could actually sell it as regenerated natural gas.
Wow.
And actually sell it on the open market, that respects, but whether we'll get necessarily that scale is to be seen.
That's right,
Yeah.
we don't have the scale for that, but I.
Probably not at the moment, whether we ever will, that's debatable, but.
We looked at that
we
once
could-
before.
But that's interesting.
That's
Thank
what I
you.
was just going to add. About 10 years ago, we did a study to look at whether or not we could capitalize on any of that methane coming off the landfill, and we weren't of a scale that we could do that. However, as part of this process, I think we'll be looking at that again with changes in technology, and we've now got a larger landfill, we've got extra cells, so we'll have to probably redo some of that work and
Yeah.
revisit that.
Yeah. So the quick summary of all that, so we'll have the initial assessment due June. So our expected implementation would be late next fiscal year, do the feasibility study, which to the CAO's point would sort of look at those options as we go along. And then fiscal year 27-28 into detailed design, be construction by the start of fiscal year 28-29, with the idea of being up and running in time for the deadline, or as close to as we reasonably can, so.
You got no choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a lot to debate here, unless, I love a good debate, but it sounds like this is what's coming down the pipe, and the next thing that's gonna come are maybe some decisions about whether it's just simple destruction, or maybe through some sort of study, we may find there some sort of use for it, but that will come at another investment, which, will have some sort of payoff maybe, and,
Yeah.
so in short, not a lot to discuss today other than an FYI.
Yeah, more just a heads up, as to say, there'll be more discussion points on how we go about it, but thou shall has basically been decreed, so.
Yeah, the timing is very short, and I'm sure it lines up with some sort of insane a global commitment that Canada has made to the rest of the world that are participating in these such commitments.
Yeah. I think, yeah, and I think I think certainly the timeline's shorter. I think part of it was, I think these were supposed to be out a little bit earlier, but given the federal elections in the last couple of years, I think the launch of these regulations got delayed because of that, because I think they're probably in our year, but I think to your point, it does shorten the window up. It's doable, but there's not a whole lot of time to mess around with it.
So will there be some sort of decision coming then to council or an RFP going for some design professionals to provide recommendations? That's
Yeah,
what's
I
coming
would
next?
expect, yeah, there'll be an RFP for a feasibility study to see what makes the most sense, and then we can discuss it, and then that'll probably be a decision point of council, just to say, because that'll be part of the budget process
So
for,
when do you expect that RFP is gonna come forward?
depending if it gets through the, capital budget this coming year.
Yeah, it'll be part of
Part
budget
of the
discussion, we'll
budgets.
include
Yeah.
the
Cost.
cost of a study in that, and then shortly thereafter, we'll come
Yeah.
forward with an RFP.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, hearing none. Is that, oh, we have, what's this,
Yeah, we just-
council agenda?
Just want to have a quick discussion on council agenda and get some direction. No decision yet on, we're not looking for motions to cancel meetings or anything like that, but just from a planning perspective. So a number of councilors have some vacations and some personal commitments coming up. So we just wanted to go over what we're thinking will come forward as a recommendation for the agenda. We've given you 6 months out so that you can see that. And also because budget is in there as well, and so just a discussion around budget timing and what this does to budget timing. So next week, we have council. The following week, there's no meeting. The next week would be a normal council meeting. I think we've got one more counselor who's identified that they won't be able to be here that day for a personal commitment. But that day is the day that we're planning on bringing the Q3 operating and capital update to council for discussion. So not a budget discussion, but sort of where we are to date this year, Q3, and give you an update on the capital projects and the status of them. And then we also have a hearing scheduled for that day as well.
I'll be away on the week of the 19th there.
On the week of the 19th is supposed to be a policy and strategy session, so again, if
Is there
we're
anything
away, then.
urgent that we gotta talk about that week?
I don't think there's anything urgent on that week. If we know that, if council wants to cancel that meeting for that week, or if policy and strategy committee wants to cancel for that week, we can do that.
Yeah.
That's not a problem.
Well, it depends on if there's something urgent.
Yeah, I think Aaron's looking right now. I don't recall that there is, off the top of my head.
Well, we don't make decisions there anyway, so
Yeah.
it wouldn't even help.
Exactly, yeah.
We had the fire services role coming, accessibility audit, scope of work, community beautification project, and culture foundation, tax exemption bylaw. So those are some of the ones we've talked about.
So, yeah, they've been on and off, but they're not time sensitive. They can probably push out a little bit, yeah.
I love a good debate, I hate to miss one.
Yeah, those ones we can probably push out if we need to, so we can look at canceling that one.
Counselor Connors? You turn on your thing.
Thank you. So just looking at the entirety of the month of February. So Deputy Warden Vino, again, away, or not able to make it the 19th. And I see in the 26th, just one counselor.
Yep.
That may be away. And I'm not sure if there's more than one on the 12th, but I am the one anyway. On the 12th, I can't make it. So, again, I know I should just wait till we get to the discussion on the 26th, but looking at the entirety of the month and,
Yep.
yeah, okay, so I'll wait until we talk about the 26th, because I'm looking at the 5th to see if we might,
Yeah,
you
pull-
know.
To might move stuff
pull
around.
things
Yeah,
into
that's
the
why we
fifth.
wanted to have this discussion today of what direction do you want to see come forward for next week?
Yeah.
And then next week, we'll put the similar in, reflecting the discussion today for a final decision from council.
Yeah, if we could use the 5th
So,
instead.
so use the 5th, so potentially move either council up or policy and strategy to the 5th. Probably council, if Councillor Connors can't be here on the 12th. Look at moving council and that Q3 operating depending on if it's okay with Tim.
I was gonna say, it depends on staff. I mean, if they're,
Yeah.
that's pushing it, that's bringing it forward, so
Yeah.
that's not like pushing it out a week, it's making it
Yeah.
earlier, so that's difficult.
Yeah, so I'll talk to Tim about potentially moving that Q3 operating forward to the 5th, and then moving the policy and strategy to the 12th. And then we can look at that council date. I'm not sure what's on the council meeting for the 26th, and if we have any presentations already scheduled or anything. But we can look at whether or not we move that. But either way, if we move it to the 19th, Councillor Vino won't be here. If we keep it on the 26th, we have one other councillor who
That's
won't be
right, so
here,
it's not fair just to look at me being away on,
Yeah.
or sorry, not able to make it. Oh,
On the
you're-
26th, you were still here.
Am I still here?
That's what you told me yesterday. That's why I
Okay.
double checked it.
I would say that
I wouldn't
also,
put too much stuff.
but, you know, especially going into March, we've got some absentee things, but, you know, there's nothing enshrined in the
Nope.
law about Thursday either.
No.
Nope.
You know,
No,
if,
that's right.
if people are just not gone for the week, but they're just
That's
gone
right.
for a day, you know?
Let's switch it.
You know, I think most of
Yeah.
us are reasonably flexible,
Yeah.
you know, I
Yep.
throw that out there as
Especially
an
with
option.
notice, like a few weeks, right?
Yeah,
So,
we got lots of time to plan this
Yep.
out.
And we could always look at moving that council meeting to another evening that week, or the week of the 17th. I think that week is the councillor who's away on the 26th. I think it's Councillor Bremner is away that week,
Which one,
not
which month are
unavailable.
you in?
I am in February,
That week,
the
I'm
week
toast.
of the 26th. Oh, that whole
Of-
week
of the
for the
17th.
6th, of the 16th to the 17th. So those last 2 weeks in February, we may have to just look at juggling it around, or not holding it, or holding it,
Don't
maybe
forget about the second
following.
week. Don't forget about the second week.
the second week, yeah.
Which-
The second week, we're gonna look at doing
Another
this,
date?
the
On the
switch.
5th.
Yeah,
Another
the
date.
5th. For the council meeting, yeah.
Yeah, excellent.
But
Thank
we
you.
may still hold the policy and strategy session on the
Yeah.
12th, and
Yeah.
it'll.
Yeah.
Okay, and then, so the next month is March, that's the little bit more difficult month, that's, we were hoping to have budget approval by the end of March, it looks like now, we're in a position where we can't push it up much further into February, especially if we're going to early February. So you're probably not gonna see first pass at budget until, March 19th, which would have been a policy and strategy. We're gonna suggest that we make that to a council meeting, because we'll have two councilors away for the March 12th, which would have been our regular council meeting. So potentially look at canceling that meeting. Hold council on the 19th with first pass of budget, and then another council meeting on the 26th. Depending on how that first pass with budget goes, and whether or not there's a whole bunch of changes, and like broad, you know, you want 10% reduction in the operating budget, or whether you're looking at smaller changes. We're hoping to do a second pass at that on April 9th. And then, if there's still changes to be made and more discussion, we're looking at final approval on the 23rd, which would have been a policy and strategy. We're suggesting that be a council meeting. And we move the policy and strategy into the 16th, which would have been a week off normally. I know, so the red ones are where you see changes to the meetings, right? So we're suggesting that we hold April 16th as a policy and strategy, that we switch the 23rd to a council meeting. And then budget approval would be either there, or if we're able to, we'll do it on the 9th. And then the 30th is the NSFM conference, so council will be away. May, look at that, I don't think any changes in May that we've identified to date. And then I just included June there so you could see that we didn't have anything normally scheduled for the first week in June, but you do have FCM that week, so that would not be available if we have to change it. And then you have the AMANS conference is the following week, so staff would be out, so we're suggesting we would request that we cancel council that week, and then we would hold policy and strategy and council as
got
normal
lots of
for
time to
those.
change
Yeah,
those
with
dates.
lots of changes, lots of time to change
Yeah,
that.
don't worry about that just yet.
The only other thing I would highlight that you're probably not aware of, because I don't think the email has gone out, but the 24th of next month, February, there will be an invite coming to you from the MODL Council, from MODL. We participated in a housing study about a year ago-ish, and it was regional. So the presentation, there's two presentations that came as part of that package. And one, they've both been scheduled. One is an evening in Bridgewater and one is an afternoon at the MODL or during the MODL council meeting. So there's an invite coming to our council to attend that presentation at the MODL council on the 24th. They've agreed to suspend their rules of operation for their council meeting so that we'll be able to participate, council will be able to participate, ask questions. But that'll be on the 24th
I
of
think I voted against that.
February. So I just want to do that. So there's potentially one meeting with consultants on the 17th.
This meeting with Model,
Yes,
is it an open discussion?
it is.
Cause so we can tell them to come cut their sign out that's on our minutes.
I'm not gonna comment on
I had a
that.
call,
Turn off your
yesterday.
microphone.
It is.
I had another call yesterday about that sign.
It's a discussion around, you'll be able to ask questions of the consultant. That's what we've been, yeah. So the consultant will do the housing study presentation, you'll be able to ask.
Review of the February, March calendar, or the.
Are you gonna send out a
Yeah,
proposal?
so I'm gonna
That's-
send-
I'm gonna put it back in, after the discussion today, I'm gonna put it all in the agenda for next week for final approval and discussion. But if there's anything in there that we needed to change,
All right,
Yeah.
order, people, order, don't make me use the gavel.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Connor says it.
Counselor Connors.
Thank you. So, could just wait a week, but if we have advance notice, I think that helps sometimes. Could we possibly talk about the February 12th council, bringing it forward a day? I'm cognizant of Councillor Church's work schedule, daytime work schedule, as well as Deputy Warden Vino's commitments. It's not fair, but if we talk about it earlier, so
With advance notice, I usually have no
yeah,
problem.
okay.
I just
So
need
that's why I
advance.
want to give even more advance notice and wait another week, right?
Yeah.
So just to put it back on the table, to move forward the council meeting by a day, if Tim would be okay with that, by a day, and
Yep.
our solicitor and everybody.
I would suggest, I'll put it out to the group, but that staff have heard us talk about it. You go out, you make your best crack at it, send it out by email. I don't think it has to be a debate, an open session here. We can decide, and then you'll put out the notice to the public. Is that okay?
Okay. Yep.
Okay. That's it then.
Great. And we have one in camera.
All right then. Well, am I to go in camera?
Yep.
All right, we'll go in camera then. I need a motion though.
So moved.
Moved by Warden Weber,
Second.
seconded by Councillor Asif. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay,
Move we adjourn.
moved and seconded. See you later, people.